The last person I expected to see standing at my apartment door at 11 p.m. was my own brother. But there he was, Marcus Wilson, Texas Attorney General, still in his expensive suit despite the late hour, holding a manila folder that would change everything. What he said next made my blood run cold. "Madeline, we need to talk about the baby you never told us about."
I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 6 months earlier, my life had been completely different. I was working as a pediatric nurse at Dallas Children's Hospital, living in a modest apartment in Deep Ellum, and dating Jake Morrison, a firefighter I'd met during a hospital emergency drill. We'd been together for almost 2 years, and while our relationship wasn't perfect, I thought we were building something real. The pregnancy test showed positive on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. I stared at those 2 pink lines for what felt like hours, my hands shaking as I sat on my bathroom floor. At 28, I should have been ready for this moment, but everything felt wrong. Jake and I had talked about kids someday, but we weren't engaged, we weren't living together, and honestly, our relationship had been rocky for months. When I told Jake that evening at his apartment, his reaction was exactly what I'd feared. He went completely silent, walked to his kitchen, and started making himself a sandwich like I hadn't just delivered life-changing news. After 10 minutes of painful silence, he finally spoke without looking at me. "Are you sure it's mine?" Those words hit like a physical blow. I'd never been unfaithful, never given him any reason to doubt me. But instead of defending myself, I just gathered my things and left. That was the last conversation we ever had. The next few weeks were a blur of morning sickness, doctor appointments, and sleepless nights trying to figure out what to do. I made the decision to keep the baby, but I wasn't ready to tell my family yet. The Wilson family had always been high-achieving, high-pressure, and high-judgment. My parents, Robert and Catherine Wilson, had built a successful law practice in Austin. My older brother Marcus had followed in their footsteps, becoming one of the youngest attorney generals in Texas history at 34. My younger sister Emma was finishing her residency in surgery. And then there was me, the middle child who'd chosen nursing over law, who lived paycheck to paycheck instead of in a mansion, who apparently couldn't even maintain a stable relationship. I told myself I'd tell them after the first trimester, then after I figured out my living situation, then after I sorted out things with Jake. But each excuse led to another, and before I knew it, I was 4 months pregnant and still hiding it from everyone who mattered. That's when Mom showed up unannounced. It was a Saturday morning in late June, and I was having one of those pregnancy days where nothing fit right and everything made me nauseous. I'd thrown on an oversized hoodie and was trying to force down some crackers when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my mother's perfectly styled silver hair and immediately panicked. Catherine Wilson never made surprise visits. She scheduled everything, planned everything, controlled everything. Her being at my door without warning meant something was very wrong, or she suspected something was very wrong with me. I opened the door, trying to act casual, but Mom's lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. Her sharp blue eyes swept over my appearance, lingering on my face, which I knew looked pale and drawn. "Madeline, honey, you look terrible. Are you sick?" "Just tired from work," I lied, stepping back to let her in. "You should have called first." "I was in Dallas for a client meeting and thought I'd surprise you." She walked into my small living room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Good thing I did. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Before I could answer, a wave of nausea hit me hard. I rushed to the bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before throwing up the crackers I'd just eaten. When I finally emerged, Mom was standing in the hallway with a knowing look that made my stomach drop for entirely different reasons. "How far along are you?" There was no point in lying. Catherine Wilson had prosecuted enough cases to recognize evasion when she saw it, and she'd raised 3 children. She knew the signs. 17 weeks, I whispered, sinking onto my couch. She sat beside me, and for a moment, I thought she might be supportive, maybe even understanding. But then she started asking questions in that same methodical way she cross-examined witnesses. Who's the father? Are you getting married? Have you told Marcus and Emma? What about work? Insurance? Childcare? With each question, I felt smaller and more overwhelmed. When I told her about Jake's reaction and that we weren't together anymore, her expression grew darker. Madeline, this is exactly the kind of situation that could damage Marcus's career. Do you understand that? He's being considered for a federal appointment. The last thing our family needs is a scandal involving an unwed pregnancy and an absent father. This isn't about Marcus, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. This is about me and my baby. Everything our family does reflects on Marcus now, she snapped. Whether you like it or not, his position makes us all public figures. We can't afford to have his political enemies use your situation against him. That's when she laid out her plan. She'd already been thinking about it during the 20 minutes I was throwing up, probably calculating damage control scenarios like she did for her legal cases. You'll take a leave of absence from work immediately. Tell them it's for family reasons. You'll come stay with us in Austin until after the baby is born. We'll say you're taking time off to help with family business. After the birth, we'll figure out adoption arrangements with a private agency. Quiet, discreet, no public records. I stared at her in shock. You want me to give up my baby? I want you to think about what's best for everyone involved, including this child. You're not in a position to raise a baby alone, Madeline. You barely make enough to support yourself. You have no family support system in Dallas, and the father has abandoned his responsibilities. This baby deserves better than growing up in financial instability with a single mother who works 12-hour shifts. Her words were like knives, cutting deep, because part of me wondered if she was right. I was scared, overwhelmed, and completely unprepared for single motherhood. But the idea of giving up my baby felt wrong in every fiber of my being. I need time to think, I said finally. Time is a luxury you don't have, Mom replied. Every day you wait, this becomes harder to manage. I'm going to tell your father and siblings that you're taking time off to help with some family legal matters. That will explain why you're not working and why you're staying with us. But Madeline, if you want our support through this, you need to trust me to handle it properly. She left that afternoon with my promise that I'd consider her plan, but I already knew I couldn't go through with it. This was my baby, my choice, my life. I just had to figure out how to live it without my family's support. For the next few weeks, I deflected their calls and texts, claiming I was busy with work and would visit soon. But secrets have a way of coming out, especially when you have a brother whose job involves investigating people who try to hide things. And that's exactly what happened on that rainy night in October when Marcus showed up at my door, looking like he'd uncovered the crime of the century. Marcus didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed past me into my apartment, his jaw set in that familiar way that meant he was furious but trying to stay professional. I closed the door and turned to face him, my heart hammering against my ribs. When were you planning to tell us? His voice was controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. Or were you just going to disappear one day and hope we didn't notice? How did you find out? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Mom hired a private investigator. He set the manila folder on my coffee table. She wanted to know why you'd been avoiding family dinners and dodging phone calls for months. Imagine my surprise when I got a report that my sister has been attending prenatal appointments at Presbyterian Hospital under a false insurance claim. My blood turned to ice. She had me follow? She had you investigated. There's a difference, legally speaking. Marcus opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photos. Medical appointments, grocery store visits where my pregnancy was clearly visible, meetings with what looked like a social worker. The question is, what exactly are you trying to hide and why? I sank into my armchair, feeling trapped. I wasn't hiding anything. I just needed time to figure things out. Figure what, Madeline? You're 7 months pregnant. What's left to figure out? Everything. The word exploded out of me. The father wants nothing to do with this baby. I'm barely making ends meet on a nurse's salary. I don't know how I'm going to afford daycare or a bigger apartment or any of the million things this baby is going to need. I'm terrified, okay? Marcus's expression softened slightly, but his lawyer instincts were still in full gear.
So you thought the solution was to lie to your family, to commit insurance fraud? Insurance fraud? I felt the room spinning. You've been using Emma's medical insurance information for your prenatal care. That's a felony, Madeline. Did you think no one would notice when Emma Wilson started getting explanations of benefits for obstetric services?
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I hadn't thought about that. In my panic to keep the pregnancy secret, I'd been using my sister's insurance card when she wasn't looking, figuring I'd sort it out later. Emma was still on our parents' family plan through her residency program, and I'd memorized her member ID years ago. I was going to pay it back, I said weakly. With what money? You're already 3 months behind on rent, according to this report. He pulled out another document. Your landlord filed an eviction notice last week. That hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on hiding the pregnancy that I hadn't been managing anything else properly. The morning sickness had made me miss shift at work. I'd been eating nothing but crackers and ginger ale, spending money I didn't have on maternity clothes and prenatal vitamins. Marcus, I know this looks bad, but it doesn't just look bad, it is bad. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? I'm being vetted for a Supreme Court nomination. The background check is going to uncover all of this. My sister is committing insurance fraud while pregnant and facing eviction? He ran his hands through his dark hair. The optics alone could destroy everything I've worked for. I'm sorry, I whispered. I never meant for any of this to affect you. Well, it does affect me. It affects all of us. He sat down across from me, leaning forward. But we can fix this. We can make it go away. Something in his tone made me look up. What do you mean, make it go away? Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a contact. I know people, discreet people. They're options, even at 7 months. Medical reasons, complications that require… Stop. I held up my hand, horrified. You're talking about killing my baby. I'm talking about protecting this family from a scandal that could ruin multiple careers and potentially end up with you in prison for fraud. I won't do it. Then you need to consider adoption. I've already spoken with a firm in Houston. They specialize in private placements for professional families. No questions asked, sealed records, substantial compensation for your expenses. I stared at him in disbelief. You've already arranged to sell my baby? I've arranged options, legal options that keep you out of prison and keep this family out of the newspapers. His phone buzzed and he glanced at it. Emma's on her way over. She found out about the insurance situation when the hospital called her about a billing discrepancy. My stomach dropped. Emma was going to be furious. She'd worked so hard to get into her surgical residency program, and any hint of impropriety could get her kicked out. 20 minutes later, my apartment door burst open, and Emma stormed in, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital. Her usually perfect blonde ponytail was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her green eyes. Are you completely insane? She shouted before she was fully through the door. Do you have any idea what you've done? Emma, let me explain. Explain what? That you stole my identity to hide your pregnancy? That you've been lying to our entire family for months? That you've potentially ruined my medical career? Her voice cracked on the last words. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did hurt me. The hospital administration called me into a meeting today. They wanted to know why I was receiving obstetric care while claiming to be unmarried and childless on my residency application. They think I lied about my personal situation to get into the program. The guilt crashed over me in waves. I'd been so focused on my own problems that I hadn't been considered how my actions might affect Emma's future. I told them it was a clerical error, that someone must have mixed up our information, but they're launching an investigation. If they find out the truth, I could be expelled from my residency and reported to the medical board. Marcus stood up. Which is why we need to handle this situation immediately and permanently. Emma looked between us. What kind of solution? Adoption. Private, sealed, generous compensation. The baby goes to a good family, Madeline gets her life back, and we all move forward. And if I refuse? I asked. Marcus's expression hardened. Then you'll face the insurance fraud charges on your own. Emma will likely lose her medical license. Mom and Dad's law firm will suffer when the scandal breaks.
and I'll withdraw my nomination from consideration rather than drag the entire Wilson family through a public investigation. You're blackmailing me. I'm presenting you with the consequences of your choices, he said in his courtroom voice. You created this situation, Madeline. Now you need to fix it. Emma sat down heavily on my couch. There has to be another way. There is, Marcus said. She can have the baby, and we can help her raise it. But that means full transparency, no more lies, and accepting that this will impact all of our careers. For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe my family would support me after all. But, Marcus continued, but if we go that route, Madeline needs to understand that she'll be financially dependent on the family indefinitely. She can't afford to raise a child on a nurse's salary, especially with a felony conviction on her record. The hope died. Even their support came with strings attached, with the understanding that I'd failed and needed to be rescued. I need time to think, I said. Marcus replied, gathering up his papers. The adoption agency needs an answer, and Emma needs to give the hospital administration a story they can believe. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling my baby kick against my ribs. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to really think about what I wanted, not what everyone else expected of me. I wanted my baby. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to figure out how to make it work, even if it meant doing it completely on my own. But wanting something and being able to make it happen were two very different things. That night was the longest of my life. I paced my apartment until 3 a.m., my hands pressed against my swollen belly, feeling every kick and movement of the baby who had become the center of this family crisis. By morning, I'd made my decision, but it wasn't the one anyone expected. I called Marcus at 7 a.m., knowing he'd already be awake and probably drinking his first of many cups of coffee. I won't give up my baby, I said without preamble. There was a long pause. Madeline, you're not in a position to make demands. Yes, I am. You need this problem to disappear just as much as I need to protect my child. So here's what's going to happen. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the biggest gamble of my life. I'm leaving Dallas. Today. I'm moving somewhere none of you can find me, and I'm having this baby on my own terms. In exchange, I want you to make the insurance fraud charges disappear, and I want Emma's name cleared completely. That's impossible. The investigation is already... You're the Attorney General of Texas, Marcus. If you can't figure out how to bury a simple insurance mix-up, maybe you don't deserve that Supreme Court nomination. Another long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. Where exactly do you think you're going to go with no money and no job? That's my problem to solve. Madeline, be realistic. You can't just disappear. You need medical care, you need somewhere to live, I need my family to stop treating me like a political liability and start treating me like a human being. Since that's apparently impossible, I'm removing myself from the equation. I hung up before he could respond. The next few hours were a blur of frantic packing and planning. I'd been thinking about this escape route for weeks, ever since Mom had first suggested giving up the baby. I had a little money saved, not much, but enough to get me somewhere and figure out the rest later. My phone rang constantly. Marcus, Emma, Mom, Dad, everyone suddenly wanted to talk now that I'd taken control of the situation. I ignored them all. By noon, I was loading my beat-up Honda Civic with everything that mattered. Clothes, a few books, my nursing credentials, and the small box of baby things I'd been secretly buying over the past few months. I left everything else behind, including my apartment keys on the kitchen counter with a note for the landlord. I drove north with no particular destination in mind except away from Texas. Somewhere around the Oklahoma border, exhaustion forced me to stop at a roadside motel. The baby had been unusually active all day, probably sensing my stress, and I needed to rest. That's when the bleeding started. At first, it was just spotting, nothing that seemed immediately dangerous, but within an hour, I was doubled over with cramping that felt like someone was twisting a knife in my abdomen. The motel clerk took one look at me and called 911. The ambulance ride to the regional hospital in Durant, Oklahoma was a nightmare of sirens and paramedics asking questions I couldn't focus enough to answer. All I could think about was losing the baby I'd just risked everything to keep. Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency room physician, was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She examined me quickly but thoroughly, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. Miss Wilson, you're experiencing what we call placental abruption. The placenta is separating from your uterine wall. We need to deliver this baby immediately. It's too early, I whispered. I was only 31 weeks old. The baby has a good chance if we act now. But if we wait, you could both die. The next few hours were a blur of emergency surgery, bright lights, and the controlled chaos of medical professionals fighting to save 2 lives. I remember Dr. Chen's voice, calm and reassuring, walking me through each step. I remember the anesthesiologist asking me to count backward from 10, and then I remember waking up in recovery to the most beautiful sound in the world, my daughter's tiny, angry cry from the NICU next door. Lily Catherine Wilson was born weighing 4 pounds 2 ounces. She was perfect, tiny but perfect. All 10 fingers, all 10 toes, a shock of dark hair, and lungs that worked just fine despite her early arrival. Dr. Chen found me in the NICU that evening, staring at my daughter through the clear plastic walls of her incubator. "She's a fighter," Dr. Chen said, pulling up a chair beside me. "Premature babies born at 31 weeks have excellent survival rates these days. She'll probably need to stay in the NICU for 6 to 8 weeks, but her initial tests all look good." "Thank you," I whispered, not trusting my voice for more. "There's something else we need to discuss," she said gently. "The social worker will want to talk to you tomorrow about your situation. You were admitted with no emergency contacts, no insurance information, and no permanent address. That raises some red flags in cases involving newborns." My heart sank. I'd fled one impossible situation only to land in another. "I can take care of her," I said. "I'm a nurse. I have a job. I can find another one." "I'm sure you can, but right now, you need to focus on recovering from surgery and bonding with your daughter. The practical stuff can wait a few days." That night, alone in my hospital room, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just from the physical pain or the overwhelming fear of single motherhood, but from the profound loneliness of having no one to call, no one who cared about whether Lily and I were okay. My phone had been buzzing with missed calls and texts, but I'd turned it off after seeing Marcus's name for the 20th time. I wasn't ready to deal with my family's reaction to my disappearance, especially not from a hospital bed while my newborn daughter fought for her life in the NICU. The next morning brought Janet Rodriguez, a social worker with graying hair and sharp eyes who'd clearly seen every kind of family crisis imaginable. "Miss Wilson, I need to ask you some questions about your circumstances. The hospital administration is concerned about your ability to care for your daughter when she's discharged. I can care for her. With what resources? You have no listed employer, no permanent address, no emergency contacts, and your insurance information couldn't be verified. How do you plan to pay for your daughter's NICU stay, which will likely cost several $100,000? I stared at her, feeling the walls closing in again. I'd run away from my family's control only to find myself at the mercy of the state system. "I have family," I said finally. We're not speaking right now." Janet's expression softened slightly. "Family disputes happen, especially around the birth of a child. But babies change everything. Sometimes they help families find their way back to each other." She left me with paperwork to fill out and the gentle suggestion that I might want to consider reaching out to whoever I'd been running from. That afternoon, I sat beside Lily's incubator, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, her miniature fingers curled into fists. She was so small, so vulnerable, so completely dependent on me to make the right decisions. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen for a long time before finally typing a text message to Marcus. "Lily Catherine Wilson was born yesterday at 4:17 p.m. She's in the NICU at Durant Regional Hospital in Oklahoma. We're both alive, but we need help." I hit send before I could change my mind. Then sat back to wait for whatever came next. Marcus arrived at Durant Regional Hospital 18 hours later, walking into my room like he owned the place. He wasn't alone, Behind him came a woman in an expensive navy suit carrying a briefcase that screamed legal trouble. "This is Patricia Hoffman," Marcus said without so much as asking how I was feeling. "She's a family law attorney specializing in crisis management." Patricia stepped forward with the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Miss Wilson, I'm here to help resolve your current legal complications and establish a framework for your daughter's care going forward." "I don't need a lawyer. I need my brother to help me figure out how to take care of my baby." "That's exactly what we're doing," Patricia said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a stack of documents. "We've prepared several options that will address your immediate financial concerns while protecting the Wilson family's interests." Marcus pulled a chair close to my bed, his expression unreadable. "The hospital bill is already approaching $200,000, Madeline. That number will double before Lily is ready to be discharged. You have no insurance, no job, and no way to pay for any of this. So you're here to rescue me? We're here to offer you a solution that works for everyone." Patricia spread the documents across my bedside table. Option 1. Marcus establishes a medical trust fund to cover all of Lily's expenses, both current and future. In exchange, you agree to supervised visitation and shared custody arrangements. My blood pressure monitor started beeping faster. Shared custody? Marcus would be listed as Lily's legal guardian, ensuring she has access to the best medical care, education, and financial security. You would retain parental rights, but within a structured framework. "You want to take my baby?" "We want to ensure your baby has the best possible life," Marcus said. "Face the facts, Madeline. You can't provide for her. You're already facing potential criminal charges, you have no stable housing, no income, and now you have massive medical debt. What exactly can you offer this child?" The words stung because part of me wondered the same thing. But looking at the legal documents laid out like a business transaction, I felt something harden inside me. "What's option 2? Patricia flipped to another set of papers. "Full adoption by a pre-selected family. Marcus has connections with several prominent couples who've been waiting for a healthy infant. The adoptive family would assume all medical expenses, and you'd receive a substantial settlement for your cooperation." How substantial? $500,000, plus all medical expenses covered retroactively. The number was staggering. More money than I'd make in 10 years as a nurse. Enough to start over completely, maybe even go back to school, build the life I'd always wanted. And option 3? Marcus and Patricia exchanged glances. There is no option 3 that doesn't involve either criminal prosecution for the insurance fraud or financial ruin from the medical debt. I stared at the ceiling, feeling trapped in a way I'd never experienced before. Through the window, I could see the NICU, where my daughter was fighting for every breath, connected to machines that cost more per day than I used to make in a week. "I need to think about this." "Time isn't on your side," Patricia said. "The longer this situation remains unresolved, the more complicated it becomes, legally and financially." After they left, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the sounds of the hospital around me. Nurses making their rounds, machines beeping, the distant sound of a television from another room. Normal sounds of people dealing with medical emergencies that would eventually resolve one way or another. But my situation felt anything but normal. The next morning, Dr. Chen found me in the NICU holding Lily for the first time since her birth. The baby was still tiny enough to fit in my 2 hands, but she was breathing on her own now, her dark eyes occasionally opening to stare at the world with what looked like serious concentration. "She's doing remarkably well," Dr. Chen said, pulling up a chair beside the rocking chair where I sat. "Her lung development is ahead of schedule, and she's starting to gain weight. At this rate, she might be ready to go home in 4 to 6 weeks instead of 8. "Home," I repeated softly. "I don't even know where that is anymore." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "The social worker mentioned that you're dealing with some family complications. I don't know the details, and it's not my place to give advice about personal matters, but I can tell you what I see." I looked up at her. "I see a mother who drove herself into premature labor because she was so determined to protect her child from a situation she couldn't accept. I see someone who's been sitting in this NICU every day for 4 days, learning how to care for a premature infant, asking all the right questions about feeding schedules and developmental milestones. That's not someone who doesn't want to be a mother. But wanting to be a mother and being able to provide for a child are different things. Yes, they are. But I've seen wealthy parents who couldn't be bothered to learn their baby's feeding schedule, and I've seen single mothers working 2 jobs who still managed to give their children everything they needed emotionally. Money helps, but it's not everything. After Dr. Chen left, I continued rocking Lily, thinking about what she'd said. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Marcus told me about the baby. I'm driving up tomorrow, whether you want me there or not. We need to talk." That evening, Janet Rodriguez returned with more paperwork and more questions. She'd been investigating my background, trying to piece together the story of how I'd ended up in Durant with no resources and a premature baby. "I spoke with your former supervisor at Dallas Children's Hospital," she said. "Sandra Martinez had very positive things to say about your work. She mentioned that you'd been having some personal difficulties, but that you were one of their most dedicated pediatric nurses." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She also mentioned that there might be opportunities for you to return, possibly even with a promotion to the NICU unit, given your recent experience here. She said that. She did. Apparently, they've been short-staffed in their NICU for months. Your experience as both a pediatric nurse and a NICU parent gives you a unique perspective they could use. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope, a job possibility, something to build on. "There's one more thing," Janet said. "I've been in contact with several support programs for single mothers in Texas. There are resources available: housing assistance, childcare vouchers, medical payment plans. It's not easy, but it's possible to make it work if you're committed." That night, I called Sandra Martinez directly. We talked for over an hour about the possibility of returning to Dallas, about the NICU position, about the reality of raising a premature baby as a single mother. "Madeline," she said finally, "I can't make this decision for you, but I can tell you that if you want to come back and fight for your daughter, you'll have support. Maybe not from your family, but from people who believe in you." After I hung up, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Patricia Hoffman's office and left a message. "This is Madeline Wilson. I want to negotiate a 4th option, one that doesn't involve giving up my daughter or my rights as her mother. If Marcus wants to help, he can help me build a life for us, not take over our lives. Otherwise, Lily and I will figure this out on our own." Emma arrived the next afternoon looking nothing like the polished surgical resident I was used to seeing. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, she wore faded jeans and a Dallas Cowboy sweatshirt, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless drive from Texas. She found me in the NICU, where I'd been spending most of my time since Lily's birth. When she saw me holding the baby, her carefully composed expression cracked completely. "Oh my God, Madeline, she's so tiny." 4 pounds, 6 ounces now, I said, not looking up from Lily's face. "She's gained 4 ounces since birth." Emma pulled up a chair, staring at her niece with wonder. Would it be okay if I held her?" I carefully transferred Lily to Emma's arms, watching my sister's face transform as she looked down at the baby. For a few minutes, we sat in comfortable silence, the first peaceful moment we'd shared in months. "The hospital administration cleared me," Emma said finally. "Marcus managed to get the insurance investigation dropped. Apparently, there was a clerical error in the system that mixed up our information." "How did he manage that?" "I don't know, and I don't want to know, but my residency is safe." She looked up at me. "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? I could have helped you." "Could you? Really? Or would you have just pressured me to handle it quietly like everyone else?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Probably the latter, if I'm being honest. The Wilson family isn't exactly known for handling personal crises gracefully. That's why I didn't tell anyone." "But running away wasn't the answer either. You nearly died, Madeline. Both of you nearly died." "I know, but I couldn't let them take her away from me." Emma adjusted Lily in her arms, her medical training evident in how naturally she handled the delicate baby. "Marcus told me about the adoption offer. $500,000 is a lot of money. It's not about the money. I know, but Emma hesitated. Have you really thought about what raising a premature baby is going to cost? Not just financially, but emotionally, physically? The first year alone is going to be incredibly difficult. I felt my defenses rising. So you think I should give her up too? I think you should consider all your options without letting pride or stubbornness cloud your judgment. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Patricia Hoffman's name appeared on the screen. Miss Wilson, I received your message about negotiating alternative arrangements. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss exactly what you have in mind. I want Marcus to help me without taking over. I want to keep my daughter and raise her myself, with family support, not family control. That's unconventional. Could you be more specific about what kind of support you're envisioning? Help with the medical bills, help finding housing, maybe a loan to get back on my feet, not a handout. I want to pay my own way, but I need time to build up to that. There was a pause. I'll need to discuss this with your brother. Can you meet tomorrow morning at 10? After I hung up, Emma was studying me with the same intense focus she probably used when evaluating patients. You've changed, she said. You sound different, more determined. Becoming a mother changes you, I guess.
It's more than that. You used to let people push you around, especially Marcus and Mom. But right now, you sound like someone who knows exactly what she wants and isn't going to back down. That evening, Emma and I had dinner in the hospital cafeteria while Lily slept in the NICU. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years, and I was surprised by how much my little sister had grown up during her medical training. The residency has been brutal, she admitted. 18-hour days, constant pressure, attendings who treat residents like disposable labor. But it's also shown me what I'm capable of when I really want something. Do you ever regret choosing medicine over law? Never. Dad was disappointed for about a year, but now he brags about having both a lawyer and a surgeon in the family. She paused. What about you? Do you regret choosing nursing? No, even with everything that's happened, I still love what I do. Working with sick children, helping families through the worst moments of their lives, it feels important in a way that practicing law never would have for me. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Sandra Martinez called me, by the way. She wanted to know if I thought you'd be interested in the NICU position. What did you tell her? That you'd be crazy not to take it. Madeline, it's a $12,000 annual raise, day shifts only, and you'd be working with premature babies. After everything you're going through with Lily, you'd probably be one of the best NICU nurses they've ever had. For the first time since this whole crisis began, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. The next morning's meeting took place in a conference room at the Durant Holiday Inn. Marcus arrived with Patricia, while I brought Emma for moral support. The atmosphere was tense, but more professional than our previous encounters. Let's be clear about what we're discussing, Patricia began. You want the Wilson family to provide financial assistance while you maintain full custody and decision-making authority over your daughter. Correct. And in exchange, you're offering what, exactly? I'd spent all night thinking about this. Transparency. No more secrets, no more running away. Full disclosure about Lily's medical care, my financial situation, my living arrangements. Regular updates, maybe monthly family visits. I want us to be a family again, but on equal terms, not with me as the screw-up who needs to be managed. Marcus leaned forward. What about the medical bills? The current debt is over $300,000 and climbing. I want to work out payment plan. Maybe you cover the emergency costs now and I pay you back over time with interest. A loan, not a gift. At your projected income, that would take approximately 30 years to repay. Then it takes 30 years. Patricia and Marcus exchanged glances. And if you can't make the payments, if you lose your job or have another medical emergency, then we will renegotiate, but I want the chance to try to stand on my own feet. Emma spoke up. What if there were safeguards,
Like, if Madeline misses more than 3 payments in a year, or if Lily's medical care is compromised in any way, then the family steps in with more direct support. I looked at my sister gratefully. I could accept something like that. Marcus was quiet for a long time, then pulled out his phone. I need to make some calls. Patricia, can you draft a preliminary agreement based on what we've discussed? Marcus, I said as he stood to leave, why are you considering this? Yesterday, you wanted to take Lily away from me. He paused at the door. Because Emma's right. You have changed. The old Madeline would have taken the money and run, or collapsed under the pressure and let us make all the decisions. But you're fighting for your daughter in a way that, well, it reminds me of Mom when she was building her practice. Stubborn, determined, maybe a little naive about how hard it's going to be, but absolutely committed. After he left, Patricia continued drafting terms while Emma and I returned to the NICU. Lily was awake and alert, her tiny fingers wrapping around my pinky with surprising strength. "Do you think this is going to work?" I asked Emma. "I think you're going to have to prove yourself every day for the next few years. Marcus doesn't give second chances easily, and if you mess this up, there probably won't be a third option." "No pressure," I said with a shaky laugh. "Actually, there's something else I need to tell you." Emma's expression grew serious. "Mom's coming tomorrow. She doesn't know I'm here, and she definitely doesn't know about your negotiations with Marcus." My stomach dropped. How angry is she? "Let's just say you might want to have security on standby." Catherine Wilson arrived at Derail Regional Hospital like a force of nature, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the 4-hour drive from Austin. She wore a charcoal business suit and carried herself with the commanding presence that had made her one of Texas's most feared family law attorneys. I was in the NICU when the nurses told me I had a visitor. Through the glass wall, I could see my mother standing in the hallway, her sharp blue eyes scanning the medical equipment and premature babies with the calculating gaze she usually reserved for courtrooms. Emma intercepted her before she could enter the NICU. I watched through the window as they had what appeared to be an intense but quiet conversation. Emma was gesturing emphatically, while Mom stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Finally, they approached each other. Mom's eyes went immediately to Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in her isolette, no longer needing the ventilator, but still connected to monitors tracking her heart rate and breathing. "She's beautiful," Mom said quietly, and for a moment her lawyer facade cracked to reveal something softer. "She looks like you did as a baby." "Would you like to hold her?" I asked, surprising myself with the offer. "May I?" I carefully lifted Lily from her isolette and placed her in my mother's arms. Watching Catherine Wilson, who'd spent 30 years arguing cases and building a legal empire, melt at the sight of her granddaughter was something I'd never expected to see. "Hello, little one," she whispered, her finger tracing Lily's tiny cheek. "You've certainly caused quite a stir in our family." We sat in silence for several minutes, the only sounds coming from the medical equipment and Lily's soft breathing. Finally, Mom looked up at me. "Marcus told me about your proposal. A 30-year payment plan for medical expenses while you maintain full custody." "That's right." "It's impractical and probably impossible." "Maybe, but it's what I want to try." Mom shifted Lily slightly, adjusting her position with the natural ease of someone who'd raised 3 children. "Do you have any idea what you're taking on? Premature babies often have ongoing health issues, developmental delays, learning disabilities, chronic medical conditions. Even if Lily is perfectly healthy, the cost of raising a child to adulthood is estimated at over $200,000. I know it's not going to be easy." "Easy?" Mom's voice sharpened. "Madeline, this isn't about easy or hard. This is about realistic versus delusional. You're talking about supporting yourself and a potentially special needs child on a nurse's salary while paying back hundreds of thousands in medical debt." Emma stepped forward. "Mom, she's not asking to do it completely alone. She wants family support, just not family control. And what happens when that support isn't enough? When she can't make the payments? When Lily needs specialized therapy or medical care that insurance doesn't cover? Do we just watch our granddaughter suffer because Madeline is too proud to accept help?" The words hit like physical blows because they echoed my own deepest fears. What if I couldn't provide everything Lily needed? What if my stubborn independence ended up hurting my daughter? I'm not too proud to accept help, I said carefully. I'm too afraid to give up control. Every time I've trusted this family to make decisions for me, I've ended up feeling powerless and resentful. Mom was quiet for a long moment, her attention focused on Lily. When I was building my practice, I was offered a partnership with one of the most prestigious firms in Austin. Financial security, instant credibility, a guaranteed path to success. I'd never heard this story before. I turned it down because the partnership agreement would have given them final say over all my cases. I wanted to succeed on my own terms, even if it meant struggling for years to build my own client base. What happened? I nearly went bankrupt twice in the first 5 years. There were months when I couldn't pay my office rent, let alone my student loans. Your father was working as a public defender then, making barely enough to cover our basic expenses.
She looked up at me. But I also built something that was truly mine, something I could be proud of, even when it was difficult. Are you saying you understand why I want to do this myself? I'm saying I understand the impulse, but I'm also saying that I had a partner, someone who believed in what I was trying to build and was willing to sacrifice for it. You're trying to do this completely alone. Emma cleared her throat. Actually, she's not completely alone. We both looked at her. Sandra Martinez called me again this morning. The NICU position comes with full benefits, including premium health insurance that would cover Lily's ongoing care. There's also on-site childcare for hospital employees, and the nursing schedule would allow Madeline to work 3 12-hour shifts per week instead of 5 8-hour shifts. That still doesn't solve the debt problem, Mom pointed out. No, but it makes it more manageable. And there's something else. Emma pulled out her phone and showed us a website. There's a foundation that provides grants for families dealing with premature birth expenses. They can cover up to 50% of NICU costs for families that meet their criteria. I stared at the screen. Why didn't anyone tell me about this before? Because Marcus and I have been so focused on managing this crisis that we didn't think of researching alternatives, Emma admitted. It was Janet Rodriguez, the social worker, who mentioned it to me yesterday. Mom was studying the website over Emma's shoulder. This could significantly reduce the amount you'd need to borrow from the family. It's still a lot of money, I said. Yes, it is, but it's not impossible. She handed Lily back to me. There's one condition I'd want to add to any agreement we make. My heart sank. Here came the catch. I want to be involved in Lily's life, not as a supervisor or guardian, but as her grandmother. Regular visits, holidays together, the chance to spoil her occasionally. This family has been fractured for months, and I don't want that to continue. Relief flooded through me. I'd like that too. And if you're going to insist on paying us back, I want it formalized properly. A real loan with real terms, documented and legal, not some informal family arrangement that breeds resentment. Emma grinned. She wants to make sure you can't claim later that it was a gift. Exactly. If you're going to be independent and self-sufficient, then you need to be truly independent and self-sufficient. No emotional manipulation, no guilt trips about family money, no using the debt as leverage in future disagreements. It was exactly what I'd hoped for, but been afraid to ask for directly. There's one more thing, Mom continued. Marcus's Supreme Court nomination. If this arrangement works, if you successfully establish yourself as a stable, independent mother, it actually helps his image, shows that the Wilson family supports each other through difficult times without covering up problems. And if it doesn't work, then we'll deal with that situation when and if it arises. But I'm willing to bet on you, Madeline. You've shown more backbone in the past week than you had in the previous 28 years. That evening, the three of us sat in my hospital room working out the details of what Emma started calling the Lily Agreement. Mom had called Marcus, who drove back to Durant with Patricia Hoffman and a laptop full of legal documents. By midnight, we had the framework of a deal that everyone could live with. A formal loan structure for the medical expenses, family visitation rights clearly defined, and a series of benchmarks I'd need to meet to maintain the arrangement.
This is either going to be the best decision our family has ever made, Marcus said as he signed the preliminary documents, or the most expensive mistake. I looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in my arms despite all the chaos swirling around her. I guess we'll find out together. 6 weeks later, I stood in the parking lot of Dallas Children's Hospital, holding Lily's car seat and staring up at the building where I'd worked for 3 years. She weighed almost 6 pounds now, had passed all her discharge tests, and was finally healthy enough to leave the NICU. Today was my first day back at work, but in a completely different role. The past month and a half had been a whirlwind of preparation. The foundation grant had come through, covering 60% of Lily's medical expenses. Marcus had formalized the loan for the remaining amount with terms that were strict but fair: 5% interest, monthly payments that would increase as my salary grew, and clear consequences if I defaulted. More importantly, he'd also been confirmed for his Supreme Court nomination. During his confirmation hearings, when senators asked about his family's values, he'd spoken proudly about supporting his sister through a difficult time while respecting her independence. The story of our reconciliation had actually enhanced his reputation rather than damaging it. Sandra Martinez met me at the hospital entrance, her warm smile helping to calm my nerves about returning to work while juggling new motherhood. "Ready for this?" she asked, peeking into the car seat where Lily was sleeping peacefully. "As ready as I'll ever be." The hospital's childcare center was everything Emma had promised: bright, clean, and staffed by licensed professionals who specialized in caring for children of healthcare workers. Leaving Lily there for the first time was harder than I'd expected, but the childcare director, Mrs. Angela Foster, had 20 years of experience with nervous new mothers. "She'll be fine," Mrs. Foster assured me, "and you're just 2 floors away if anything comes up. Most NICU nurses check on their babies during breaks for the first few weeks." The NICU itself felt different now that I was working there instead of visiting as a parent. The equipment I'd feared just weeks ago was now familiar. The alarms and monitors that had once terrified me were now tools I understood completely. My training supervisor was David Chen, Dr. Sarah Chen's husband, and the head NICU nurse. He'd been working with premature babies for 15 years and had a reputation for being demanding but fair. "Having been a NICU parent gives you perspective most nurses don't have," he explained as we made rounds. "But you can't let your personal experience cloud your professional judgment. Every baby is different, every family handles crises differently." By lunch, I was feeling more confident. The medical knowledge came naturally, and my experience with Lily had given me insights into reading the subtle signs that premature babies displayed. During my break, I checked on Lily, who was awake and alert in Mrs. Foster's arms. "She's been a perfect angel," Mrs. Foster reported, "took her bottle like a champion, and has been content to just look around and take in all the activity." That evening, I drove to my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood about 10 minutes from the hospital. Emma had helped me find it, and Mom had co-signed the lease until I could establish credit in my own name again. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, and it was a home where Lily and I could build our life together. The apartment came furnished with basics from a combination of Stanley contributions and my own careful shopping. Emma had insisted on buying the crib and changing tables. Mom had provided dishes, linens, and kitchen essentials. Even Marcus had contributed, though characteristically, his gift was practical: a year's worth of health insurance premiums paid in advance. As I gave Lily her evening bottle, I reflected on how much had changed since that terrifying night when Marcus first appeared at my door. The crisis that had nearly destroyed our family had ultimately brought us closer together, though in ways none of us had expected. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "How was the first day?" "Exhausting, but good," I typed back. "Lily was perfect at daycare." "Told you so. Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's this week." It had become a new tradition: weekly family dinners where we could all stay connected without anyone feeling controlled or managed. Dad, who'd been largely absent during the crisis, had thrown himself into grandfather duties with surprising enthusiasm. He'd already started a college fund for Lily and spent most of the dinner conversation telling anyone who'd listen about his granddaughter's obvious intelligence and beauty. "We'll be there," I replied. 3 months into my new job, I received an unexpected visitor during my lunch break. Jake Morrison appeared in the hospital cafeteria looking nervous and uncertain. I hadn't seen him since the night I'd told him about the pregnancy, and he looked older, more tired than I remembered. "Madeline," he said, approaching my table hesitantly, someone told me you had the baby." "Yes, I did." He sat down across from me without invitation. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us, about what I said that night." I waited, not making this easier for him. "I was scared," he continued. "I handled it badly, really badly, and I want to make it right." "How exactly do you plan to do that?" "I want to be involved. I want to help raise her, support her financially, and be her father." For a moment, I was stunned into silence. 6 months ago, this was exactly what I'd hoped to hear. Now, it felt like too little, too late. "Her name is Lily," I said finally. "She's 4 months old, she was born premature, and she spent 6 weeks in the NICU fighting for her life. Where were you for any of that?" "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you made it clear you didn't want to know. You questioned whether she was even yours, Jake. You walked away without a word." He looked down at his hands. "I know I messed up, but I want to try to fix it." "How exactly do you plan to do that?" "I want to be involved. I want to help raise her, support her financially, and be her father." For a moment, I was stunned into silence. 6 months ago, this was exactly what I'd hoped to hear. Now, it felt like too little, too late. "Her name is Lily," I said finally. "She's 4 months old, she was born premature, and she spent 6 weeks in the NICU fighting for her life. Where were you for any of that?" "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you made it clear you didn't want to know. You questioned whether she was even yours, Jake. You walked away without a word." He looked down at his hands. "I know I messed up, but I want to try to fix it." "How exactly do you plan to do that?" "I want to be involved. I want to help raise her, support her financially, and be her father." For a moment, I was stunned into silence. 6 months ago, this was exactly what I'd hoped to hear. Now, it felt like too little, too late. "Her name is Lily," I said finally. "She's 4 months old, she was born premature, and she spent 6 weeks in the NICU fighting for her life. Where were you for any of that?" "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you made it clear you didn't want to know. You questioned whether she was even yours, Jake. You walked away without a word." He looked down at his hands. "I know I messed up, but I want to try to fix it." I studied his face, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or just guilt finally catching up to him. Either way, it didn't matter. Lily and I had built a life without him, surrounded by people who'd chosen to support us even when it was difficult. If you want to be part of Lily's life, you'll need to go through the proper legal channels, establish paternity, work out a custody arrangement, commit to regular support payments. This isn't something you can just decide to do casually when the mood strikes you. "That's fair," he said. "I deserve that." "It's not about what you deserve, Jake. It's about what's best for Lily. And what's best for her is stability, consistency, and people who are committed to being in her life for the long term, not just when it's convenient." He left his contact information and promised to call a lawyer about formalizing his parental rights. I watched him go, feeling surprisingly little emotion about the encounter. The desperate, heartbroken woman who'd fled Dallas 7 months ago would have been devastated by his abandonment and overjoyed by his return. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more self-reliant, and more protective. That evening, as I gave Lily her bath and got her ready for bed, I thought about the journey we'd taken together. From the terrifying moment I'd seen those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test to this quiet evening in our own apartment, so much had changed. My phone rang, Marcus calling for his weekly check-in. It had become a routine, partly because of our loan agreement, but mostly because he genuinely wanted to stay connected. "How's my favorite niece?" he asked. "Growing like a weed. She's already outgrown her clothes." "And how's her mother handling the juggling act?" "Some days are harder than others," I admitted, "but I love the work, and Lily's thriving in daycare. I think we're going to be okay." "Better than okay, I think. You've proven something important, Madeline, not just to the family, but to yourself." After we hung up, I sat in the rocking chair I'd bought for Lily's room, holding my sleeping daughter and thinking about the future. There would be challenges ahead: financial pressures, the demands of single motherhood, the possibility of Jake complicating our carefully constructed stability. But there would also be milestones to celebrate, achievements to share with my family, and the daily joy of watching Lily grow into her own person. I'd learned that independence didn't mean isolation, that accepting help didn't require giving up control, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from admitting vulnerability. Most importantly, I'd learned that love, whether for a child, for family, or for the life you're trying to build, is worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. As I laid Lily in her crib and whispered goodnight, I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might bring. Whatever challenges came next, we'd face them together, supported by the family that had learned to love us better and the strength I'd discovered I possessed all along. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.